All right, this is for Tarek Hassoba. Um, so basically, what this is um, the first thing that you want to pay attention to is your anatomy. You have some anatomical issues, and it mainly goes into the neck. So your neck would actually come. Oh, this is grayscale, so let's change this to RGB. And so the neck would come more or less something like so, and then the head would come a lot further down. So that's the first thing that you want to do. So I'm just going to adjust that, and something like so. And we're just going to kind of, actually we'll cut this into a new layer here, and we will get rid of this, and we will go into just paint bucket this in with your gray color here. All right. So the first thing is you want to kind of put this in line here, and let's get rid of some of this. Kind of, actually, it's pull something like that. So that's a much better use of your anatomy. And then the next thing that you want to pay attention to is you want to um, remember that the face is kind of formed in different kind of ideas here. And I'll explain this in a second. Um, so you've got your, and I'm not going to mess too much with the torso at all, or anything like that. I'm just going to we'll create a new layer here. So when you separate your face and you've got your center line here, the problem you have is you've got the eye way over here, and you've got one in the right spot. You've got the nose is small, but your mouth ends here. So things are pushed to the left and to the right of that line. And so the best way to do this is to break down the form. So we're just going to simply kind of break the, and I always call it the kind of the face shield. So this is your baseline here, and then everything else is built off into this. So you've got your head and things like that. So you've got your eyes, you've got your nose, and you've got your mouth, which you've all got in the right location. So the vertical proportions are fine. It's just now you need to kind of separate that eye into mid proportions. So this eye is actually going to come over. The nose can actually is okay, and then usually centered down from the mouth. So this mouth here is going to be pushed over from the center line here. So with those proportions in mind, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to let's grab this, and we're just going to slide that over like so, something like that. And then this eye here, we are going to push over like this. And then we are just going to erase, or in this case, I'm just going to brush in. Oops, my brush, here we go. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to brush in. And we're just going to pick this and kind of fill that in real quick here. Okay, so with that said and done, something like this. With that said and done, the next thing that you need to pay attention to is you need to pay attention to your light and shadows. So if you look at yours, you've got light coming from the left side and light coming from the right side. So it's kind of the centered light, which is fine, but the problem with it is it's not casting on everything. So you need to be consistent with your light source. And that's kind of a huge thing that you need to work with right off the bat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of paint in here a base idea of where my light source. So the first thing is identify where your light source is coming. If your light source is coming from straight ahead, then everything needs to be kind of straight ahead. I'm just going to do a new layer here, and we're going to pick our lights. So we're going to have light here, you're going to have light here, you're going to have light coming here, here, and all I'm doing is just flattening out the light sources. So you're going to have coming like so, and if the breasts are big enough, this will cast a shadow, but I'm just going to continue on with my light source like so, like this, and even something over here and something over here. And this light source is going to be very similar, so we're going to keep this light source very consistent with that of your photography, and even some like on the neck here. So as you can see, I've balanced out some of the light. Now I need to balance out some of the darks. So what we're going to do is I'm going to actually trim this up a little bit because the shoulder is just sticking way too far out. So we're just going to balance that. But I'm going to take some of the darks now and think about where the cast shadows are. So if I have a light source that's generally in front and their head's turned, I'm going to get a cast shadow here. I'm going to get a little bit of a cast shadow here. I'm going to start getting some of the curved shadows around in this area here. I'll probably get something casting here, and then I'll probably get things casting like this, a little bit of darkness here. It's going to start curving around, and I'm going to see some of the darkness going on around there. Right, and that leaves for the midtones where the light is kind of going to pick up and kind of be that middle ground, if you will. So in this case, it's going to be on the edges here where things are curving down, especially like under the breasts. And I'm just going to pick some of the lights and darks, and where things are curving away, that's where your natural color is going to take effect. And these are all things that you want to really kind of pay attention to. And I'm going to even have some probably light going on in here, like so. I'm also going to have light on the nose ridge where it's picking up my light source, and this is where it's dulling down. Now, as you go, I'm just going to kind of roughly paint this over. Now, as you go, all I'm doing is just kind of pushing in lights and darks. Okay? And that's really where your shading comes in, is that push of where light is hitting, where dark is. And I always recommend using reference. Reference is going to give you the best kind of idea between, where things are going, that type of thing. If you have a strong light here, you're probably going to pull out some of that strong light, and it's going to kind of go along the ridge here and then just dissipate. Or you pick some up over here. You will pick up, we'll get rid of some of the shadows. We'll kind of mid-tone some of this out, maybe even kind of, looking like so. But you also have to think, if the light's coming from a little bit above, then you're going to get some shadows underneath too. So, shadows like that, and then you're going to pick up some highlights underneath the lip too. So all of that needs to be kind of thought out and broken down before you even do anything else. And that's going to give you the kind of adjustments I think that you need. And then if you do, let's do like an overlay. But first, let's go here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go into my levels here, and I'm going to kind of balance out my levels here. So all I'm doing is taking the artwork that I've already got and just really minimizing that light work tone, and then adding that light work on top of it as an overlay or whatever I need. And then in this case, all I'm going to do is just going to go blur, Gaussian blur, And so that is a much better kind of source, if you would, for your light source than anything else. Um, and as you can see, as I start developing my art or the artwork here, you can see that the lights and darks are going to really start coming out, and the form is going to get a little bit better. You're going to get a little bit more push in there, um, things like that. So those are all types of things that you want to really focus on and kind of look at when you're doing your artwork. With that being said, then I'm just going to merge these two layers down. Let's go brush here. I'm just going to pick this, and I'm going to clean up like so. So I've got kind of that idea of light and dark in there, and I'm going to use that to start pushing out some of the details now. You're also going to get a little bit more from the hair, things like that. You're going to get some shadows, some darker shadows under here, things like that. I'm just going to clean up some of this. And then that's where we start kind of building up the more of the design. And I'm just going back to your regular design here to kind of work with the values a little bit more. So like your hair here, let's just do this again here. So you've got your hair, and your hair is going to be like just a darker value. So I'm just going to add some darkness to that. This is going to be a darker value according to your image. So your and again, darkening the value here. So as you can see, the light and darkness of that is inconsequential. It's how your values lie, how your shadows are lying. All of that is going to kind of push you and help you out. So even going into here and just grabbing these outer borders here. Like so. I'm not really making sure I've got everything kind of all perfectly done. I'm just going in and kind of building up the different pieces. And then same thing as grabbing like so, grabbing your darkness for your eyes, um, and work with anatomy a little bit more, because I'm looking at some of this and I see anatomical issues that should be kind of adjusted and fixed, like so. We just kind of pull up. And then this is where the subtle highlights come in, and you can kind of build up on those subtle highlights. some of the So as you can see, I'm still building up the ideas of what you've got. I'm just adding in a little bit more of the form and that information. And then on top of that, once you get these done, once you have your idea or your concept done, consider adding a secondary rim light or things like that. And so by doing that, just gonna add some small details in here real quick. But by doing that, and you can see just by adding in little subtle facial features, you're blending out the features a little bit more. But by doing that, by now we can add in, we can add a secondary light in to give a little bit of life. And this is real rough, but and you can see how that adds a ton of form because the light is so strong. And so things like that, just adding in an additional kind of light source kind of really emphasizes what you're trying to kind of come up with. Now, I'm going to just flatten this real quick here. And so you can look at the difference between this, where the light source is kind of convoluted, versus this, where it's a little bit more organized, a little bit kind of pushed together. And so those are things that you need to definitely look at. And the best way to do it is just through sheer repetition of real life references. All right? I hope that helps you out.